Hello, everybody, and welcome to Off the Scribe podcast. And today I have a very special guest, a criminologist named Richard Decker, Ph.D. We have to mention. How are you, Richard?
I'm good, Guy. Thanks for having me on the show. Appreciate being
Yeah. Well, I'm so excited to be talking to a real life kind of a criminologist because, I was up until now, I would scream at the kind of TV screen at Grissom and would say, well, there's your evidence. You can book him. You can, there, yeah, the fingerprints and the bullets match. And they say, well, that's a load of BS. And I kind of knew it, but you wanted the bad guy to fall at the end. You want the good ending. You want the guy to get the girl. You want
Yeah,
the
you want the bad guys to lose.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
But there is, but you say, well, like that's not the reality. Well,
yes.
that's an edged sword, because when I had my detective agency, and now you know that even though I'm a criminologist, I practice more of the forensic sociology part of it because I do have that experience. They're kind of blended in together. And I'm a behavioralist. But the thing is that I used to tell my detectives, follow the evidence. And I did criminal defense for 25 years. I trained a lot of detectives, and I would tell the people, you want to find the truth, follow the evidence. Now, and with Grissom, with CSI, we both know that it's just blown out of proportion, that everything has forensic evidence, but that's not
Yeah,
really
keep
true.
him on the line. Yeah.
Right. That's not really true anymore. And but when the physical evidence does match, then yes, the bad guy will fall. But it has to not only match, but you have to be able to put the bad guy in the place with the intent. And American law, a lot of it, you have to prove intent. What is the intention of the individual before you can charge them or prosecute them? And if you follow the evidence and the evidence can match, and you can place the defendant at the time and place of the event, you've got a good case.
Mm.
Now, does that mean you're going to win? No. Even though you've got physical evidence, doesn't always mean that you're going to win. The people that win in criminal trial are the people that tell the best story.
Oh, interesting.
So whoever is the better orator, the attorney, will win. It's how they can convey and convince the jury or the court that the evidence is actual evidence, that it tells the story, because the defense attorney is going to get in there and say, no, it doesn't tell the story. Okay. And that's where the two stories shall meet. Okay. And whoever tells the best story and conveys to the jury, yes, this is true, is going to win. And the other thing that, remember the old show Perry Mason? I don't know if you saw it over there.
Yeah, it was a kind of detective show. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. He was an attorney, and everybody always liked Perry. Well, that's true in the American court system. You want to get the jury on your side. You want them to like you, because they can not like your defendant at all, right? But yet you told the better story. Okay, so you're going to win. And I had case in point, right?
Yeah.
I had a case that I caught one time where this guy robbed a bank, and the cameras were not loaded in the bank. So they all described this individual that robbed the bank. Well, I worked for the defense, and I was like, that sounds like, we'll call him Joe, that walked around. He was a homeless guy in the town, and Joe looked like my defendant. And I'm like, okay, So I went and took a picture of Joe,
Mm.
and I blew it up on the day we went to trial. And they put me on the stand, and I said, well, I got statements from all the tellers, and all the tellers said they thought at first it was Joe, not our defendant. And I put the picture up there, and the jury went, oh,
Gasping, yeah.
right. And I said, so, although he looks like Joe, my defendant, I have to kind of tend to believe, because Joe's homeless, but I don't have any evidence to support it, that Joe was the guy that walked into the bank that day, because they all described Joe to a T. Well, the guy got found not guilty because I told the best story. We all knew he was guilty as hell, okay? But it depends on who presents the best, the most sensible part of the evidence.
Yeah.
And the evidence will tell the story. It's just a matter, and it'll tell the truth. But then you got to get it before the jury and the lawyer may not be really good at presenting the evidence, whereas the defense attorney is really good at presenting the counter story and making it believable.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so interesting. I'm thinking back, I'm hearkening back in my thoughts about a case in Israel that has been going on for a long time, for 12 or 14 years, where someone who was accused, a janitor in a school who was accused of killing a 9-year-old girl, I think, maybe she was 11 or 12. So, so you and me don't have the evidence for this case, and we can't talk about it, but I'm just going to describe you a little bit and tell me what you think.
Okay.
I don't want you to solve the case, but I just want to.
Well,
yeah.
It wouldn't be possible to solve the case.
Yeah, of course. No. I'm not asking that. I'm just asking you for your general thoughts and your perspective and from your experience. Yes, of course, everything is speculation, allegedly, of course.
Okay.
That's a great caveat for our modern world, shall we say, allegedly. So, so he was a janitor at the school. He was accused of killing this girl. They found her body in one of the stalls of the school's bathroom. I think she was missing her undergarments. I think she wasn't positioned. The body wasn't positioned or wasn't tampered with, but there was a lot of blood on the stall door. And maybe they found a piece of clothing in his kind of a janitor's closet or maintenance room, and it is very speculative because there were a few years ago there was someone accused another person, someone who went to the school and knew another person, and accused them of committing the murder, and that they confided in them and saying that they were the real killers. And now this alleged killer is trying to defend themselves. I won't say which gender, because I don't want anyone to know what the case is. So what do you think about that in general? Because he was acquitted twice, and he is still in prison and awaiting another trial. What do you think about that? Yeah.
Well, first of all, I have to think about opportunity. Who else had opportunity and had access to his closet and access to this to the victim? Now you've thrown somebody else in there that said, hey, I did this. Okay, so that makes me question what type of physical evidence is actually there.
Mm.
You know, did they do the forensics? Because on a sex assault murder, which I'm assuming that this was.
No, it
Okay,
wasn't. It wasn't.
was it?
No,
Okay.
it was
Then on
just
that aspect,
murder. Yeah.
even with the bloods, was it a violent murder? You said there's blood all over?
Yes. Yes. It
Okay, so
was definitely a murder. Yeah.
blood splatter would definitely help with telling the story. Um, you know, if there was a lot of splatter, it would tell me that depending on how the body was laying, what the splatter was like, that if it was violent, that it was motivated by emotion, you know, anger, lust, or fear. Because the adrenaline, when people kill, their adrenaline kicks up because they know they're going to get caught. They don't want to get caught in it, and it exacerbates or magnifies rather the behavior of the killer in such a manner that evidence is left all over the place. Now, my question it would be: when they arrested this individual, what type of did they check his body? Did they test him for microorganism? You know, to find the
Yeah, of
victims.
course. Yeah.
You know, what was the clothing like, footprints, fingerprints? Because you said it was in a bathroom,
Yes,
correct?
in bathroom stall, in the school
Stall.
bathroom stall. Yeah.
So somebody's going to have had put their hands somewhere for leverage, particularly when the victim went down, so that they don't fall on a slick floor because of the blood.
Yeah, yeah.
This all turn, in my mind, on the physical evidence. Now, not knowing the physical evidence and not knowing the other person that says, "Hey, I did this," that was in the school and left. If that's a possibility, this other person, is it possible that he or she has killed before? Is this a serial type scenario? Because serial killers will kill, take a break, and then go back to killing when they think it's safe, because that's why they're so hard to catch, because there's that instinctive pattern of, okay, I got to stop. I got to wait. They've been known to wait as long as 8 or 10 years before they start killing again. So you got all these dynamics on that case. So I think, and you said this guy, the original guy, has been acquitted but still sits in prison.
Yeah, he was acquitted twice,
Okay.
but he is still awaiting trial in prison another time, and now it's an ongoing trial right now. Yeah.
So they must be, what they're probably doing is still out collecting evidence and finding little tidbits of new evidence. Because typically
Okay.
here in the United States, once you're acquitted, you're released, unless that what's happened is that they have found more evidence. Okay. And then even at that, in the American system, if they've been acquitted, they're going to be released, even if it's for a short period of time, new evidence to be found, and then they'll arrest them again. Okay. And then they'll keep them, unless even if the attorney files for a speedy trial demand, that doesn't always necessarily here in the States mean a speedy trial. It just means you're putting the prosecutor on notice to get their act together that you want to end this as quickly as possible. So as far as your case, I mean, if I was out there,
it's not my case. I'm not on the case.
In your situation, you know, the case that you're explaining.
No, I'm joking. Yeah, of course.
If I was the investigator out there, my first go-to would be, let's look at all the physical evidence and start putting a story to the evidence, and start looking for the other factors that would diffuse this evidence. Okay, as a criminal defense investigator, that's the first thing that you do, is you look at the story. Let's start asking the who, what, when, and why, and how. See if it starts making sense, and then start finding the witnesses or the evidence that will thwart the prosecutor's evidence. And I mean, sometimes that's problematic because over time, witnesses, people, they forget. Not only do they forget, but they tend to change their story and embellish, because the longer time goes on, they talk about it. Even though they're told you don't talk about it, don't say nothing, people still talk. And then they've gotten interjection from news media, from other outside sources. So then their story starts to change, even though they don't think it does. It's natural behavior for their story to change.
Yes.
So, I mean, they have a lot of dynamics going on with that. And the second person, I would have to take a hard look at them too and say, well, okay, why this confession? Because the first thing I think about, well, this guy got in, or person, I'm using the term guy arbitrarily. Okay. Just
we won't cancel you for misgendering someone here.
Okay.
At least not in my show.
So
I think.
this guy says, yeah, I did it. So my first thought is, okay, what's your motivation? Are you really wanting to come clean? Is there some kind of underlying mental disorder that you have? Do you have the need to be the center of attention? Did you really do this? What evidence do you have? What behavioral or thinking issues do you have? Do you suffer from illusions of grandeur? I'd get a psychiatrist in there and say, listen, let's do a psychological profile on both of these people. I would tell the defense attorney, let's, get a psych profile on both of them to figure out which. Now, in the States, they don't have to subject themselves to the psychological exam. They don't have to subject themselves to polygraph, and polygraph is not 100% anyway, because people can beat polygraphs, but there is some testing that can be done that the MMPI, which is a good standard test, and the Big Five personality exam, both will tell the examiner if they're trying to beat the exam. Okay. So they'd be able to catch on that and be able to better define the psychological profile to the individual. Those are my thoughts on this.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a lot to say about that, but I don't want to, to harken back to that. I want to move on. And I want to start with your titular years as a forensic behaviorologist or criminologist, or what. First of all, before you say anything, I'm sorry to cut you off, but to say, why did you want to enter this field of criminology, psychological behavior, all that?
Well, a long time ago, I was a paramedic, and I had always I like helping people, and I had an accident to where I was not able to function as a paramedic anymore. I lost the feeling to my right hand due to an accident, and had to have major reconstructive surgery and stuff. And I had always wanted to, I wanted to help people. I always wanted to work in law enforcement, but wouldn't be able to pull the trigger of a gun and with the damage to my right hand. So I opened a detective agency, and I started doing, it was a private detective agency, and I was the only one in the country, as far as I know at the time, that did nothing but criminal defense. I didn't go chase divorce cases. I didn't do anything but did criminal defense. That was my niche. And that's how I started. And the older I got, I realized that I was not going to be able to do anything else other than criminal defense PI, beating the beat, beating the pavement type thing, unless I got an education. So before profiling was a thing, I read 2 books on how to do profiling. And I went into court one day and I said to this lawyer, I said, listen, I can profile a jury based off the behavior that they're doing to tell you who to pick and who not to pick, who your best candidates were. And I knew that I knew more than anybody else in that courtroom about it because I'd read the 2 books and I had been practicing, right? So that's how I got into it. And I did surprisingly well. So then I started branching off into geographical profiling, looking at people's behaviors and putting it close to their home to how they would behave on a criminological standpoint, right? And then knowing a little bit about human behavior, I was able to pinpoint where people had left evidence and people had left off the story and missed witnesses because they didn't know. So fast forward, I'm in my 50s, didn't want to beat the pavement anymore, so I started going back to school. All right.
Yes.
All my kids were in school, they were in high school, and Dad was going back to college, starting from scratch. And I earned my PhD 2 years ago, and and I'm 64 now. Okay. And I started working internationally, right, on cases and books for people about 5 years ago while I was in my undergrad work. And when I got to where I'm at today, I was like, okay, you know, I am tired of seeing people at the worst in their lives. I have got to be able to take a break. So I focused more, not as much on the criminological standpoint, but the sociological standpoint.
Yes.
Because when you do criminology, you have to understand psychology, sociology, and then criminology. So it made sense for me to transition to forensic sociology, because I've had the experience with the behaviors, I've had the education, I've written papers and books about all this. It just made sense for an easier transition to be able to help people better understand how they think by using the same assessments that I've written and been exposed to in my education and used with criminal defense to defend people and helping them build better relationships with themselves and with others. That's how I got where I'm at today. It was just a desire to want to help other people, and to be on your show gave me an opportunity to let people know that, hey, there's somebody here that can help you. If you've got these thoughts in your head that, you know, I'm not a therapist, but if you want to change the way you think and have a better chance for success, I can help people do that.
Yeah,
Okay?
I love that. I love that idea, that kind of approach, you know, an integrative approach. You know, you're not totally away, or you haven't escaped the long arm of the law. That's for sure. But I like this integrative kind of not therapy, as you mentioned, but maybe a kind of a coaching, or
that's exactly what it is. It's coaching.
Yeah, or mentoring, or something to that effect. But I don't want you to get away so easily with mentioning that you were a PI, and PI, for those of you who don't know, it's a private investigator. It's it's a very classy kind of field or niche.
I don't know if it's classy.
The underpinnings of society. Yeah.
It's glamorized on television. And that being said,
Yes.
My wife, she thought the same thing when we first got married 26 years ago. And I told her I had to go do surveillance for a homicide case that I was working on for defense. Took her with me in February in the bowels of the cold in Wisconsin where I practiced. And it wasn't so glamorous for her. Let's just say that. It was not the experience she was hoping for.
Yeah. Poor thing. Yeah.
Yeah, well, she survived.
Yeah. So you went from a paramedic. It kind of there isn't a. It's weird because there isn't maybe kind of the ER or all those shows, but there isn't a paramedic that is there isn't a kind of a character or a archetype that is that you
It's a weird
can.
transition.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
because you don't have a nice example from fiction or from culture that of an epic hero of a paramedic. That's weird to me. Yeah.
Well, and it is to a lot of people. It just boils down to that I have built my entire life around serving other people. I always have felt like if I am helping somebody in their time of need, I'm that person. I'm there for them. And that the powers
Yes.
to be, the universe, however you want to say it, have put me in the right place at the right time for the right people. So when I couldn't do paramedic work anymore, I thought, what was the one thing I wanted I could do and that I could help people? And there were several cases going on at the time where I was living, and I was like, um, I could help by doing criminal defense, right? And it started out that I wanted to be a paralegal
Mm,
for a criminal defense attorney. So I
yeah.
went to school and learned how to become a paralegal. It wasn't until I got an internship with the public defender's office in the state of Wisconsin where the lawyer called me in and said, listen, I'll teach you how to be a criminal defense paralegal, but I want you to go out and be an investigator. I had no idea that they investigated,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Until
yeah. I
that
learned
moment.
that from TV. Yeah, that they
Right.
do the dirty work, shall we say?
Right. So I really started to be a paralegal. That's what I started out to be. I wanted to be in the office. I didn't want to do anything in the street anymore because I'd spent 15 years in the street as a paramedic running 911.
Yeah. I
And
also volunteered, yeah, as a paramedic. Yeah, just wanted to put it out there.
no, I was always paid as a paramedic. I
Yeah, I
volunteer.
volunteered. Yeah,
Oh, you do? Okay, okay.
yeah.
I volunteer as an arson investigator right now. Um,
Oh,
okay.
yeah, yeah. That is very interesting. Yeah, that field
So
of.
when he brought me in, he said, I want you to do this investigative work. And I told him no. I said, I want to be a paralegal. He goes, I'll make a deal with you. You go out for 3 days with our investigator. If you don't like it or you don't do well, I'll finish out your degree program with the paralegal and I'll give you full
Mm,
credit. Fine. I'm going to prove this guy wrong. Well, lo and behold, fast forward, not only did I become an investigator for the public defender's office, I became an investigator for the coroner's office.
mm,
And from that, I started my own detective agency and worked on some major cases. Like I was the first detective to go to the Wisconsin Supreme Court on battered women syndrome. Our case was a homicide case. She was a victim. I went and argued, presented evidence with the attorney um, on the effects of this woman having the crap beat out of her to where she was forced to participate in this homicide of her own child.
yeah.
And we lost, but 5 years later or 3 years later, it went to the United States Supreme Court through New Jersey. They used some of the aspects of what we argued in Wisconsin, and battered women syndrome in the United States became a viable defense under
Oh,
certain criteria. So, because it's the re-victimization of women being beaten by men
mm,
that are committing crimes and dragging them into it. Okay.
yeah.
So that gave me more motivation to be who I am today because I live off of trying to make people's lives better. Now, with the criminal justice system today, it's hard to do that because they stack charges. And
Mm,
what that means is they'll stop you for, let's say, a broken tail light. They find your marijuana. They find this, they find that.
Your sidearm, yeah.
Right. So then they throw 37 charges at you at a traffic stop, and they do this deliberately.
Yes.
Okay. So then they can say, okay,
Yes.
we're going to plea you down to this. And
also the idea for civil forfeiture, yeah, which is ridiculous. Yeah.
Or less prison time. But statistically, they get a win. The prosecutor gets a win on their record. Okay. So the public thinks that they're doing a good job.
Yeah, yeah.
When they're really just overcharging the hell out of everybody.
Use the numbers, yeah.
Right. Now, there's a prosecutor here in the Charleston area that she got on TV and said, my job is, we need more prisons because my job is to put people in prison. No, ma'am, it's not. Your job is to use every arrow in your quiver that will rehabilitate a person's life, not necessarily put them in prison, because the criminal justice system was originally set up so that there would be alcohol and drug treatment, treatments for sex offenders, treatments for this, treatment for that, so that treatment could be given in conjunction with jail in hopes to put a viable member of society back out on the street.
Okay.
But our criminal justice system.
So you're saying that it was originally founded to be in this kind of organized system, where the system of rehabilitation, or originally,
the premise was rehabilitation, but in this country in 1993, it became no longer was rehabilitative, but it became retributive, because the three strikes that you're out, they started closing programs. And when they started closing programs that were for drug and alcohol and stuff like that, they started closing treatment centers, which put people in the street, which in turn raised our homeless population.
The victimless crimes, of course.
Right. And then the 3 strikes you're out came into play. Now, the heavy hitters for, are what it was intended for was for RICO and other crimes that were higher up. 3 strikes you're out, you're gone, you're off the street, the organized crime will minimize. Well, those people have the money to fight it, and all it has affected in reality is disproportionated parts of society that don't have the money to defend it. So you got people that are in jail for 3 strikes for having an ounce of marijuana, and they're in prison for the rest of their life.
Yes.
So until we become a restorative criminal justice system again, and rehabilitative and not retributive, our criminal justice system is shot the heck in a handbasket out here. Ergo, that's why I don't do criminal justice anymore.
Yeah, I totally understand your point of view. I can't understand your point of view, but I get,
You get it. I understand. Right.
I think I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, we're in 2 different societies,
Yes, because our kind of the structure, we don't have a constitution. That's the first thing, which is also a blessing and a curse in many ways. But it seems to be more of a curse than nowadays, because the kind of Israeli society is very monolithic. I think even more than the United States society, which is not monolithic. You like to think that everybody wears the same clothes, shop at the same malls. They're vastly different. And I know a bit about American culture, but not a lot. So what I wanted to get at is, have you ever had any experiences with kind of, let's say, unsavory people who were more evil than usual, shall we say? People who, did you ever work on very very national news, shall we say, kind of level of stories and cases.
Yes,
Oh,
I consulted on one, and I told them I would look at the files
Hmm.
and give them an idea of what to follow. It was for an appeals case. It was very early on in my career. And I looked at it, and I just, I made my recommendations and sent everything back and washed my hands of it.
Hmm.
So it was a multiple homicide. So yeah, it made national news here, you know. So yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
had my hands in that.
yeah, I can see that you don't want to talk about it, and it's fine.
No,
It's completely
no, I
fine.
just,
Yeah.
it is, I mean, when you do this kind of work, okay, it's just like when you're a paramedic, law enforcement, first responder, okay, you come across stuff that you really affects your psyche.
Hmm.
And it, you know, I had that case. I've also had cases to where I have that weren't national, but were just as horrific
Yeah.
and just as mentally taxing.
Hmm.
And you cannot be in this business for more than a minute and it not affect you. And if you say that it doesn't affect you, you're either a liar or you're just so far detached from society that you probably should
Yeah.
be locked up on your own merits. You know,
Yes.
because I have
That's an
seen
understatement, as I get it.
I have seen more than my share of of evil in my life. Um, it haunts, but I have taken steps to be able to deal with it and not it. You never erase it, but to have a better understanding of why it happened and why it came to me. And we all have roles that we play. The universe connects us all for a reason, and we are here for a purpose, but none of us understand what the purpose is. So
Yeah.
as long as I can put that into my head, is that somebody somewhere needed me to look at it. I did my job. I did it the best of my ability. I don't need to know the outcome or who it affected or why. I just
Mm.
need to know that I did what I could do.
Hmm. Yeah.
So it's
Yeah, sometimes you just gotta go through the motions and do your job. Be rational, be analytical, without any inhibitions, just to do your job with no biases.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is what you expect from someone who works in such a sensitive areas, shall we say, of society.
Yeah.
Yes, the things
Yeah. I
that.
mean, yeah, there are things that my family don't talk about. They don't know. In fact, I even, I kept case files for many years because I was required to by state law to keep case files for like 7 years
Mhm.
to get through an appellate process in case anybody needed it. And I kept them all locked up and quiet. And when it was time to get rid of them, I had a bonfire. And
Whoa, whoa, a bonfire.
yeah,
Wow.
I burnt
That's old school, yeah.
I burnt 3,000 files
Oh my
from
God.
over a 22-year period that went up in smoke. But discs that they were on, because I had them back up a
Wow.
computer, paper, everything went in a bonfire out at a buddy's farm. Went out to his house and said, hey, I need to burn some stuff. He goes, good, we're having a bonfire tonight. So they threw it in the middle before they started the fire. Before they built the stuff up around it. I stayed there and I drank my Diet Pepsi and sat in a chair and watched them build it up and started. And those files are long gone. And it was a relief to know that they were gone, because nobody
That's
could connect
amazing,
me to
yeah.
them again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about something a little more kind of cheerful, shall we say,
Okay.
or playful. To talk about, Hollywood tries to portray this great image of the detective, the profiler, the kind of hero that will save the day and get the girl and get many girls in the process. Each episode has another Bond, James Bond girl, shall we say, or movie. So in general, let's try to go over all the kind of themes or the sciences that those kinds of shows get wrong or get right. So where shall we start?
Well, I think what we should start is that in the lie is a smidget of truth. And there has to be a smidget of truth in the lie, because it doesn't work if there isn't the truth built into the lie. Okay. And everybody like we talked about before, everybody wants the hero. So it's all part of how we process. We all want to feel good. We all want to know that the guy got the girl. We want the happy ending, even though, and we want that because our personal lives don't have it. Our perception is that we don't have that. Got the girl, the happy ending. We've got all these stressors, all these problems because of how we perceive and think. So Hollywood, as far as your science, your forensics, and all that, there's a little bit of truth in there, and then there's a great deal of exaggeration. Okay, like the medical shows. We talked about the medical shows. Okay, they'll look at it, and they're famous for showing a heart rhythm on the monitor, and they would say, well, that's sinus tachycardia, and I would sit there and go, no, that's a winky box. Or they'll go, that's a systole. No, that's electronic distortion. So they do what they do in Hollywood. And this guy, Lieutenant Joe, whatever, homicide detective on A&E, commendable cop, did more cases than anybody in Colorado, over 300 cases, and 96% of his cases were solved. Great cop.
Whoa.
Okay. Wow. However, the show over dramatized for effect. The way that they would go knock the door to get the guy, the way, some of the things that I see on the show.
Yeah, we have a warrant and they break in,
isn't the way that you really do it, but for drama, that's the way that it's done. Because you have to remember, Hollywood tells stories. Okay. And our society every society is premised off oration, rituals, and customs are all based off of stories that we've heard for eons that support our way of life. So Hollywood is just an exacerbation of oration and storytelling.
Yeah.
Okay. they have to have the drama because people need that drama. We have to stay connected because it draws people in, it connects them to that story, and because they can all relate to somebody or something in every story as a part of their own life. It may not be a homicide, but it might be like a child that's acting out, you know, like my one son is autistic and has obstinate defiance disorder. So when we see somebody like on these shows, we relate to not to the behavior we see, even though it's not like our son Sean, right? But we relate to that behavior because we've experienced it in our real life.
Well, those kinds of shows have a different spin than the true crime shows. There is this kind of a beautiful mind, a main character who has all those abilities, who can, you know, solve crimes through.
But the drama is still the same. The drama is still
of course, of course.
It makes people pull into it, and they try to relate it to their lives. It takes them, the arts, and when I say the arts, I mean Hollywood, television, movies, all that, takes people away from reality, gives them that psychological break that we all need for a short period of time, because we all have this perception that we're missing something to make us happier in our life, when we're not. It's just the way we're perceiving it. So these shows, they grandiose the whole story, so it pulls people in so that they can feel better about their life because this didn't happen to them.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah, of course, of course. You know, you you live or you kind of sublimate your own wanting to be this hero, and you project it onto the hero on the screen, and you know, you have delusions of grandeur. Every human being has it. You know, that Carl Gustav Jung talked about the ego from the time of the Aufklärung, the time of the Enlightenment, which was a little bit afterwards, not the kind of the proper real-time Enlightenment, which nobody knows. So it's I'm sorry to say nobody knows anything anymore. I'm an academic, unfortunately. I hail from the humanities, art, English, and history, which is a lot.
Yes.
But I like it so much, and I like to do all those things. But that's beside the point. Just to get to, I want to talk specifically about the different types of sciences that appear on those shows.
So you're talking about the forensic sciences, the psychological sciences, and the sociological construct.
There are, yes, also that, and also the kinds of techniques, the technology that is being applied in those shows. Well, there are a lot of science fiction also.
Right, there is. There's a lot of stuff that isn't really available. Like, okay, with the forensic sciences, the main thing that I see from forensics, and which is the technological aspect of it, is that they put up this facade that forensics are done within hours, days. And the reality is that some of these tests take weeks, months, years to complete. And then you start getting into the backlog of the actual forensics lab. I mean, they will hold on to evidence for years before they start processing it. And the one thing that they fail to mention in these cop shows is that 4 to 6% of evidence sent to a forensics lab is usually lost.
Yeah.
Okay, because they don't know where it went, because they're so inundated and they don't have enough workers. Then you start looking at the technological parts of it. We found this, we scanned this fingerprint, we got this off of a camera,
Bite marks, that's my favorite part.
Right, the dental bite
How do
marks.
you know that? That's the most shocking thing to me.
Right, you
Yeah,
have to have an
personally.
imprint of the defendant to be able to match you have to get the denture imprint of the defendant. That's not always possible. Okay. And then you're talking about like the cameras. Well, yeah, we got call them on camera. Okay. Well, most of the cameras people buy today,
Yeah, when they analyze like the height, he is
they're
the
so,
same height, he is wearing the
yeah,
same clothes,
they're
and I'm saying, what does it have to do with anything? Yeah.
right. They're so grainy. And then facial recognition is so new, right? And they're saying on some of these shows that, oh yeah, this facial recognition shows that this person's lying. Really?
That's
We have
ridiculous.
we have found in that AI, artificial intelligence, will develop its own personality if given enough room and lie. Okay. There was some colleagues of mine over in Dubai that were doing that study like 5 years ago. Okay. And we were talking back and forth. They said, yeah, this computer just lied to me. Like, what do you mean? He said, it has developed so well that it can make up its own story. So what makes you think that a computer is going to tell you if somebody is lying or not? What they're doing is they're analyzing and putting that graph up. And then what they're doing is taking a behavioralist, and a behavioralist is looking at it going, no, they're looking this way, they're doing that, that feature looks like this. And even as a behavioralist, telling somebody, the profilers with the FBI, love those guys. They're great. They're hilarious
They're
because
hilarious.
I've seen them when I've seen them in court, right? They get on the stand and everybody say, profiler, profiler, right? First words out of their mouth. Profiling is not an exact science. It is based off of my education and experience. So there is no implicity to being 100% right. Nobody says that on the TV show. Nobody tells anybody else that. You want to talk about the greatest dichotomy and disservice you can do in a crime show is make people think you can tell people are lying with AI that is relatively new, that hasn't been around for very long, less than 10 years, okay, maybe 15 tops, and it's not perfected. It is not. Hell, a polygraph that's been around for 40, 50 years.
So you're saying that, I'm sorry to cut you off, yeah, the criminal profiling, the kind of psychological, behavioral profiling, like on the Criminal Minds, which I love so much, that, and I'm so sad that it ended, but yeah, what a great show. So you're saying that that science is originated or it was developed only 15 years ago or so?
That's been going around for about 25, 30 years. Okay. Longer than that. It was started, the MMPI was actually started off of women in Reader's Digest in 1963 that developed this test because they were bored at home in their kitchen.
Yes.
It was taken from that to a psychologist that developed the MMPI. Now, people need to understand that psychological profiling is not an exact science. But when given the test, we see certain traits and certain behaviors that suggest the activity. Now, keep in mind the shooter in the old man that was a shooter in Las Vegas a few years ago.
Yeah, yeah, it was a cop, no?
I don't think he was a cop, but he was an older man. Okay,
that was another guy. Yeah.
Yeah. My point is until that time, the mainstream idea of a serial killer to the FBI was between the ages of 22 and 35.
Yes.
That was as close as they could get based off of the characteristics and some of the behaviors that they saw. Profiling is not and never will be an exact science. So for when they get on TV and they say, oh, this, and this, it's never a complete picture.
Well, they tell a good story, you know, maybe they will get a
Right.
credit, yeah, or
It-
get
it's
a
never-
conviction on the
Right.
other hand.
Right. It's never a complete story. And then the problem you get is you get an uneducated society
Okay.
that sees that, takes it,
Yeah,
and runs with it when they sit on a jury, causing real problems
Yes.
in the judicial system. So,
Yeah.
to answer your question,
Yeah. Wow. Well, we covered so many topics and it was so interesting to me, like mind-blowing, some of the things that you said, because I'm not a criminologist, I'm not a psychologist, and I'm not a behavioralist.
I'm not a psychologist either.
Yeah, I'm none of those
And-
things, yeah, but I never had an affinity for the social sciences. I hail from the humanities, you know, the
Right.
arts
The-
and yeah.
The only difference between you and me is that you love humanities and I love behavior. Society says I'm an expert because I have a doctorate and I've been doing it for a long time. But the reality is that even no matter how good of an expert you are, unless you can admit fault and that you're not always right,
Mm.
you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. And the
Yeah,
difference between you and me is we love what we do. We have two different interests. I know nothing about the humanities and the stuff that you study is so far from what I study, and it's a
Yes.
different aspect. But what brings us together is the interdisciplinariness of it, that we can have a conversation, we can learn from each other, and be better people overall.
Yes. Also, we have that kind of a basic maybe connection with being academics and trying to apply the scientific method, you know, because you can scoff at the arts and say that they're a bunch of kind of left-leaning liberals and they don't care about you know societal issues and they're not living in the real world concrete. But you know,
People scoff at what they don't understand.
yeah. But I'm not a liberal, so that's fine.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You have a passion and you pursue it and you love it, and that's all that really matters.
Yeah. I'm a classical liberal, shall we say. Yeah.
I don't know what I am. I think I'm I just try to label myself
a realist. Yeah. Well, Professor, PhD, whatever you would like to.
Rick,
Thank
I
you
only tell
so
people,
much.
I thank you for having me. I tell people all the time, even when I go talk on stage, they're like, Dr. Rick Decker. No, it's just Rick Decker. If I don't like you, then I tell you, yes, it's doctor. Okay? If you've made me mad, yes, it's doctor. Otherwise, it's Rick, because if you start adding too many titles to people, you lose the individualness to them, you lose the personal connection, and I don't ever want to have that happen to me. I have the PhD so people know that I know what I'm talking about, but the reality is, hey, Rick, how you doing? Hey, because if I can't connect with people, doesn't matter what I have, I'm no good at anything.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rick. This has been
I appreciate it.
Amazing
Please stay in touch. I don't want this to be the last time we talk.
No, of course not. Of course not. I will try to integrate you into future projects, or we can talk.
Or just reach out and say, hey, we've got each other's emails. Let's
I'll send hi, you know, how are you doing? How are the grandkids? How's life in general? Yeah. How's Wisconsin? Is it Still
Well,
freezing
I'm in
cold.
I'm in Charleston, South Carolina now. I moved from
Yeah, I
Wisconsin
know.
15 years ago.
Yeah,
So
it was just a stupid joke, but
no,
yeah.
it's stupid.
Okay, it's a joke.
It's good.
um, yeah, it was good talking to you, and it is. I have a lot more to discuss about because we haven't touched upon, like, you know, human behavior, the connective cultural nexus that
Mhm.
binds us together. We haven't touched upon those kinds of subjects, which, I'm from the humanities, but specifically art history and philosophy, but I'm very interested in social sciences. It's not accessible to me just yet, but
Mhm.
I want to learn more. I want to know because I'm also a writer, and I want to build kind of characters, and I want the characteristics that define humanity. And I want to use them to my advantage for my writing. And also there are kinds of archetypes, shall we say.
Mhm.
Um, literary scholars say that there are only seven kinds of stories you can tell. So that's interesting to me. So I want to develop, I want to uh, envelop, shall we say, the human consciousness in all its facets and all its sinewy kind of intrigues. Um, everything in everything, shall we say. That is,
Yeah, I learn as much as
the,
we can.
sorry?
Learn as much as we can.
Yes, that's the only thing that we are here to do. We are
Right.
here to learn as much as we can before, we have to say goodbye.
Yeah.
And hopefully it will be not in a while, shall we say, not yeah, uh, yeah, not in the current, I don't know, cycle or whatever, because there, the James Bond movie says it all. It's not a good day to die.
No, no.
No,
I
it's
think
not.
Lieutenant Worf from Star Wars, he used to say,
Oh,
Star Trek, today's a good day to die. No, no, it's
no, it's not. There is no good day to. Yeah. Well, Rick, I want to thank you so much, and I would like to ask you for your final thoughts.
uh, there is a lot more for all of us to learn, be it in criminal justice, sociology, humanities. And the only thing I can think of for final thoughts is the only way that we're going to change the world is change our mind and learn how to think better and respect each other more. You know, that's all I got. I'm kind of drained. This has
That's
been
all,
fun.
folks. That's all, folks. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
your final thoughts?
My final thoughts. Well, I'll have to think about it so, and get back to you. That's my
Of
final
course.
thought.
Well, let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, of course. Whenever, whenever.
I have another appointment I have to tend to now. I've got a client
Yeah,
coming in.
of course. Of course. So
But
I'll say goodbye to the audience. Bye
okay,
bye. Thank you,
good
Rick.
journey, my friend. All right, bye bye.
Bye bye.